Hey everybody, Larry Powell here, your host for Studio HFL, where you truly do hear from legends. Man, I am getting that down, Gabriel. It's like, it's like Wolfman Jack back in the day. He came on and everything was just perfect. Not that I'm
Uh-huh.
comparing myself to Wolfman Jack, but
Well,
um, so yeah, we're going to do the top 40 here over the next over the next hour. But
okay, yeah, I'm
um,
into it.
yeah. So, okay, give people a chance to log on here. I'm going to take this opportunity, of course, to thank Trent Austin and Austin Custom Brass for sponsoring this month's interviews. And of course, we started out April with Eric Miyashiro, then on to, oh my gosh, Sergey Nakaryakov, then Mark Gould,
Yeah.
and now Gabriel. You want to go by Gabriel tonight?
Gabriel would be great. But if you call me
Gabriel.
Gabe, I won't mind.
Well, with Gabriel.
Sure.
What an eclectic lineup this was this month, right? I
I mean,
mean,
I'm in extremely good company. I just feel like I don't belong here, but that's but I'm just so honored to share this month with those three. Oh my gosh.
well, I put you in their company, right? I think you definitely belong there. But
Too
okay,
kind.
so back to Trent Austin though. Do you know Trent?
Yeah, well, I think we've probably met sort of casually at the conferences and things. But I actually got to know him a little more through his live noodles on Facebook, and just like asking him questions, and he's so nice to talk to. I think we've even maybe talked on the phone once or twice about horns and things. But yeah, that was actually way before any of us did any of this stuff. Trent was getting on there at least once a week and just playing what anybody wanted him to play and answering questions. And it's a perfect segue into talking about stuff, because I think about him all the time with those, and I mean, I used to sort of rib him sometimes. He'd be like, "What do you want me to play?" It's Giant Steps, and he would do it though. He would just say, "Oh yeah."
Right.
And I had a legitimate, I'm like, well, I'm really working on Giant Steps and I really do want to hear you do it. I know it's sort of a jerk move, but I
Right.
also know you can show me some stuff, So he's been a big inspiration to me during all these crazy times, just getting on, doing live streams, doing digital content for trumpet that's educational but fun and honest, And so yeah, I mean, that's the way I really know him the most, at least in my professional life, is through that.
Well, and what a great see, that was a better advertisement for Austin Custom Brass than anything I could have said, because that's exactly it. It's that personal experience that Trent provides. And I think that permeates his shop.
Yeah,
Right. So
absolutely.
I'm still plugging Austin Custom Brass at
Yeah.
this moment, but austinCustomBrass.biz, B-I-Z, if you guys want to go there and check that out. But yeah, Trent, I think, is everybody's instant friend, because he is such a nerd when it comes to trumpet, and he wants to share everything, right? Just like
Yeah.
you're saying. So I'm curious, after you asked about Giant Steps, did you ask about the bridge to Girl from Ipanema?
No, I didn't, but that'd be that's another good question.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. He really comes from a genuine place of just not curiosity is the wrong word. He is curious, but he's been curious so long that when people ask about stuff, he's like, "Oh yeah, let me show you that." He's the answer to someone else's curiosity now, and I just think that's really brilliant. That he doesn't have to do any of that stuff. None of us have to do a lot of the stuff we do, but I mean, but he really, he has a shop. He has a whole career that doesn't need him to go online and play some stuff and answer questions, and he does it anyway. And he could do a lot of other things, like sponsor podcasts. And by the way, you can send the other check, since he said, Larry, if my ad was really that good, where to send the money. No, but he could have done a lot of other things, but I think, and I'm sure it's a little bit to promote the shop, but you can do a lot of things that aren't also good, right? Like, you can just promote and just be, you can pay for ads and you can do a lot of things, but that's not only brilliant because it is smart marketing, but it genuinely helps people. And I think that there's a lot of us in the music industry who, that's a huge part of our value system, to help people without provocation and without any kind of reciprocation. And so it emulates that, but again, not just emulates, it is that. And so And that's one of the questions that I ask a lot is like, well, why not do something good if you're going to do something? I mean, like not just the right way, but like, in a helpful way. It doesn't have to
Well,
just be one thing.
and he really enjoys it.
Yeah.
Right? It never seems like a drag, like, well, here I am gonna do this again, and I think you can see the joy in his face when he's playing and talking about, this new vintage trumpet that he just got into his shop, right? I mean, so there's a great conversation starter for you too, because you're kind of into historical instruments. Is that the best way to phrase that?
Maybe I'm into oddities, I guess, and historically relevant things. My dad, as you know, has a huge cornet collection that we sort of keep together. We both sort of feed into it. Him much more so than I do, because he has a lot more money than I do, and he knows all the deals. He knows all the people, but he has a humongous collection that. It's over 100 cornets that are of really good quality, both playing quality and historical significance. And so I'm part of that collection in terms of one of the collectors for it and one of the curators of it and caretakers eventually. And parts of it are here. In the other room, I have maybe half a dozen different kinds of not particularly great but fine examples of period cornets. Actually, I have a Boston 3-star that's extremely good, and I have 2 New York Wonders in there, and I have a Levy model Courtois that's a very good playing instrument too. One of the New York Wonders needs a valve job very bad. I mean, so he has 3 New York Wonders that all play great, so I don't need 2, but I need 1 to play, and so it's that kind of thing. And the one that I keep going back to is this one behind me. This is a French Besson that's in C, B, B flat, and A, and high pitch C. So it's kind of like in D flat, C, B, B flat, and A. But it's really high pitch and low pitch C and regular pitch C.
I can do that with my embouchure.
Yeah, right. You just pull out some slide.
Just play out a tune.
But I bought this from Dylan. I just saw it on the website, and it was under C trumpets. And I saw it and I went, well, that looks like an original French Besson trumpet, and, this design looks really familiar, but historically, this was kind of the first time that anybody did it this way. There are a lot of other designs before this that didn't quite work, but this worked so well that basically everybody copied it from then on out. And I mean, if you look at my Yamaha, it's in the case over there, but if you look at my Yamaha B flat, it has bracing even. Not 2 here, but it has bracing even in some of the same spots and everything. I mean, it's really remarkable how good this horn was for when it was built and how much we relied on this design. And so I immediately, first of all, I had to have it for that reason. But then when it came, something else happened, which was that it taught me how to play trumpet. I thought I was doing okay. And then I played this trumpet and I sucked so bad on it. And I just thought, well, I can tell it's not something about the way that the feedback I was getting, I was like, well, it's not the horn. I'm not doing this right. So I had to figure out how to play the trumpet again. And boy, I'm 1,000% more efficient if I play the modern horns the way that I have to play this horn. And that is down to sort of inefficiencies in the designs, but also just not making room for error. You had to be really good back then to play the trumpet at a professional level. And I'm not saying you don't have to be really good now, of course, but the instruments wouldn't give you any room, right? So there was just from the get-go, you had to really hone your craft and really get your instrument. And they all played differently back then too. But anyway, so things like this are really interesting to me.
Can you get specific on that horn? Can you show?
Oh, sure.
Like the different keys on there. I'm very curious on how that works.
Well, so I'll just play this one. We don't need to hear a real B flat. So I gotta make sure and I'll turn. Oh no, I'm already set up to play trumpet. This is my teaching setup, so I should be good to go. Mm-hmm. So this is in B flat right now. It looks like a B flat trumpet. It's normal. I usually play this also with some vintage mouthpieces. So like this is a New York. If you're a real trumpet nerd out there, then you'll know what this means. This is a Vincent Bach Corp period comma New York with a medium stamped 7. So it's not the deepest stamp, but it's probably I'm going to get this wrong, but it's certainly not the 20s, 30s. I think it's probably mid to late 40s, if I'm not mistaken. I will have to look it up on dating Bach mouthpieces every time. But anyway, so what am I going to play? Some of the valves also don't work out exactly, so you have to pull them just the right amount, and sort of finagle it, because it can't be in 5 keys, right? But anyway, let's see. I'll play part of a Bay etude that's in front of me, right? So that's a nice, normal B flat. But I have to really make sure my tongue position is in the right kind of. I can't just blow hard on this horn because it's just stuffy then. But if I sculpt the air just the right shape, then it just lights up, and then I get all these colors out of it. So okay, but that's I can pull. So I got this guy. I play giant steps. It says right over there.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Thanks, Klaus.
So here you do a quick pull. It's not really quick because you have to hold this in, but if I greased this with some old beeswax like they would have, then it would be sticky. And then I could just do a quick pull like that to A. And then I have to, but it's not quick still because you have to pull these slides. And then the third slide was already all the way out. So you can sort of pull the other, the spit valve release. But I don't want to do it too much. But we'll see. So now I got to transpose. So it's a little low gear, and that's down to me. But let's see. Another part of this is. So a little articulation is harder the longer the horn is for me. But so there's A, and that's pretty normal. You'd see B flat and A cornets, trumpets all the way through the first part of the 20th century. So that's not a big deal. But there's, as I like to say when I do any demonstration, if I can do it this way, but there's more.
Of course.
So if we don't mind, so if you're the Wolfman, then I'm like Billy Zane. Is that the guy? But there's more.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, but wait, there's more. So now this is the low pitch C slide, and one of the reasons that this works this way is because you'll see that the front of this horn has I'm getting too close for my focus, but this is where the receiver of a normal trumpet would be, and then the venturi of the lead pipe would be right in here, right? But this doesn't have that. This has a bit that is a Morse taper that goes into a bit, or a receiver that's a Morse taper. And this happens to be almost exactly a half step long. So what that means is I can actually take this out right now, and I can play this instrument in C, right? I got to push this back in. Okay, now we're ready. Right, so I'm playing the same notes down a step. So this is in C right now, and it actually plays very well in this key. If I put that back in, now it's going to be a half step lower, which is kind of B, right? B natural. So let's see. I really.
Wait a minute. So it was in C. Oh, right. You said
right. So now I'm going down another half step, but not all the way to B flat. So let's see. Right now it's in. It's a half step in between, right? Actually plays extremely well in B. I sometimes play what is it? Pulcinella Suite. It's in the key of F. It's amazing.
Beautiful.
It's so much easier. But anyway, but wait, there's more. Then it has a high pitch C. So this is the C slide, really, right? That would go. So now it's back in C because that took another half step back off, right?
Right.
So. and it plays really well in this C as well. So either configuration of C and B, those are the best keys for this instrument. But if we were to take advantage of the fact that I can take this out for another half step, now this is a Morse taper again, right? That's the difference with the cornets. They'd have a different taper for those little pipes at the end, those little bits that we put in. That's usually not the same taper as the cornet shank. But in this case, it's still a Morse taper. And so that means I can put any mouthpiece in there that has a normal taper. And now I've got a D flat trumpet, right? If I push this in, let's see, now that's going to be. The only problem is it's not really meant to play in this key. So you can hear it's kind of. It's like a very flat D flat, and the valves aren't long enough, so it doesn't really work in that key. But if I put the right mouthpiece on it with the right backbore, and I get the valve slides just in the exact right places, then I actually could play. Like an example would be the first trumpet part from Bartók Concerto for Orchestra. That famous, you have the yeah. So you start that on G sharp, right? So now it's G. Right, that's a high C now, which you could get it all configured with the right mouthpiece, and you could just nail that excerpt down to the wall, and then you'd probably want to switch back if you had to play it out of that key at all. But it's right. What's weird is that the fingerings all feel, if you've practiced these excerpts, you're like, I don't think I can do that. But anyway, this is fascinating to me, because this was designed and sold and purchased by somebody and played, obviously very played. The bell has a little bit of a cant to it. It's just sort of pushed in a little bit. You can see, and there's been a little bit of repair work. I don't think that Dylan had to do any. Now that I say that, yeah, I think I got it from Dylan. I don't think that Dylan had to do any. I think it was any repair work had been done already, but it's very, very little. So this is pretty, except for that slight curve of the bell and a little bit of some rolling. You can see it was rolled out here. You can't really see on camera, but there's a little bit of the wrinkles that it was probably crushed pretty badly at some point right here. And then there's one little dent here, and everything else is perfect on it. So it probably plays the way it did. This is probably a slightly later model. It might, I keep saying sort of like 1910 or 13 or somewhere around in there. But this model started just before the turn of the century, so probably 1895.
So how many do you think were produced when they did that?
Oh gosh, that's really hard to say. The Besson. There's Besson nuts that know all the serial numbers and everything, and that's actually where I looked this up, and I found a couple of conflicting reports, which is why I say it could be like really turn of the century, like 1900, and it's probably a little later. But Besson's really super hard to track down too, because it's like every manufacturer, all their factories burn down once, right? And then they move, but they lose all their records. And somebody even posted about this, I think, on Facebook recently. We're saying, like, how come it's like all these factories burn down? And the answer is
IRS.
No, we were really bad at preventing fires for a really long time. I hate to say it that way, but there's a really good book called Lifted that's on the history of elevators. And this is, if you're going to interview me, you got to know that we're going to talk about some weird stuff. Because we've
already crossed into that. We just crossed into it. Yep,
that was it. But this book talks about and now we're all very sensitive to this because of COVID, but it talks about the air quality at different levels of buildings and how dangerous fires were for apartment buildings. We're talking pre-elevator is, everything basically 1860 and before. And they would build buildings about 4 stories or 6 stories, sometimes high. They could go further than that because you wouldn't live very long if you lived on the 7th floor of a building. Just a lot of stuff that, so fires were one of those things that, like, little things would set off. I mean, think about the Chicago fire. We think it was started by a cow. I mean, that's not really, we don't think that anymore, but that's the legend, right? And since this is a legends podcast, we're going to talk about legends. And so the legend of, was it Bessie the cow? And knocked over a lantern and burned the whole city of Chicago down. But that's how bad we were at fire. So of course they all had machinery, and they were forging metal in some of them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could go wrong. And even if it's just a little electrical thing, it was really hard to catch that at night when nobody was there. And so, of course, they all burned down. Of course, they all kept paper records. Of course, those all burned up. And so it's no surprise that we don't have the records that we wish we did. It's actually amazing that we have the records we do from Bach, that never happened at the Bach factory, or at least it would happen after the records were moved. I think there's one Bach fire. I don't know that for sure, but
anyway. Well, think about it. I mean, redundancy was probably not a huge concern.
No.
Right. I mean, you didn't really have the means to create copies. And so, yeah. And not until, right, this happened enough times did somebody probably think, hey, we should duplicate this somewhere somehow. But, I think about the way that current manufacturers produce theirs and how they stamp serial numbers and the sequence and whatnot. And I kind of wonder, I know they keep great records, but what I'm thinking back is to why and how Bach did not necessarily keep sequential serial numbers, and I'm wondering, is that a common practice still? Because, back to kind of the IRS comment earlier, right. That was a legitimate thing.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes some things easier and it makes other things more difficult to keep. I mean, it depends on what your value system is, right? A lot of one-off makers don't use serial numbers. Each instrument is unique. They use think about before we had any serial numbers. You didn't have serial numbers. You had a maker's mark, right? Very, very early trumpets. My dad has an original 1700s Baroque trumpet that had been converted to a slide trumpet somewhere in the mid 1800s, which means that's a gigging instrument, right? This guy played it. And then a new technology new mouthpiece, right? Whatever it is, a new technology came out and he goes, I got to have that. I want to be able to play like whole steps and half steps that I couldn't play before. So he gets it done. That instrument doesn't have a serial number. It has a maker's mark on the bell, on some of the parts in the valve construction. And, that's what they did before, because that's all that really mattered. It didn't matter when it was made. It still doesn't really, it's a way for collectors and connoisseurs, I guess, if you want to call it that. People who, there's people who want a Mount Vernon Bach. And so there's a way to find out what that is because we have good records. If we didn't, think about, except for the Mount Vernon stamp on the bell, which again is just a maker's mark, we wouldn't have any idea when they moved and what parts they took with them that still said Mount Vernon, but were really an Elkhart instrument. And and before that, New York, we still don't really have a super great idea of exactly what horns were made in New York, or the New York factory and the Mount Vernon factory, right on the edge. I used to have serial number 11,090, I think it was, and that was like 1953. It was like really close to the edge, but it was for sure New York. And the next one that I ever touched that I could get my hands on was a 16,000. That was definitely Mount Vernon, and that's pretty early still, but somewhere 12 or 13 is the move date, so and the Bach loyalist guys, they know all this stuff. I have to look it up every time, but I think it's fascinating to, if you want to talk about a trumpet history buff, John Hagstrom, who I studied with, is like the ultimate, especially Bach history buff, because he cares about the Chicago Symphony's trumpet legacy, right? And so he has the best horn. He called it, what did he say? He called it the Phantom Chicago Symphony trumpet. And it's because, there's these famous 4C trumpets that were Mount Vernon era that they picked out, right? They went to the factory and they played a bunch of horns, and, the section picked out these 4 horns, and the orchestra owns those horns. And John found one that was in between 2 of the serial numbers. He found a Phantom era, and it plays really well too. And so, and of course, they have the 4 horns there that the Chicago Symphony owns, and he has a bunch of other ones that are sort of leading up to that, and that other trumpet players actually played in other symphony orchestras at the same time, and he does presentations on this, and he plays the horns, and you can hear the difference. I mean, it's really, that's what fascinates me. I have to look up all the details every time, but I like the idea that we can kind of borrow the legacy of You know, I can play the instrument that somebody else played and kind of get a sense of what was going on for them and why they played the way they played. Maybe, I mean, a great example is Maynard Ferguson. Actually, Maynard Ferguson, one of my greatest trumpet heroes, right? I think probably for all of us. And I'm really a big buff on the early Maynard band, so like 1955 up through the 60s, you know, before Chameleon even. It's just
When he was
amazing.
playing actual jazz, right?
Yeah, I mean that was a real dance band. They really just they would do back to back to back tunes like you hear. Well, nobody does dance bands anymore, but you know where you didn't stop. You just the next tune got counted off as soon as the last tune ended, and you just went on. And the CDs play like that, and the band used to play like that. But for a lot of that era, he played a 38B Constellation, and I just happened to get my hands on one. I knew one guy that was selling it to a different guy, and I was going to see one day A and the other one day B. So he said, "Well, will you just take this horn to him because I'm not going to see him for a week?" I said, "Yeah, can I play it? You know." Well, yeah, sure, you can play. You know, play a couple notes on it. Sure. I took it in my house. I put a mouthpiece in. I played it, and I went, "Oh." Not like, "Oh, I figured out how Maynard is Maynard," but like all the sounds that I'd been hearing my whole life of when he plays. There's a certain sound, a certain glide between the pitches, a certain something to it. And just playing an F major scale on this horn, and I went, "Oh, I get it. It's like it's real tight up front, but it's kind of like it blows through on the back end, and you can blow as hard as you want, and it'll just kind of keep working. But like it gets softer between the slots and all this stuff that was like it would be impossible for me to do that on the horns that I was playing then." And so then it's just a light bulb went on. I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense." So, I mean, that's only one little thing we can do with these historical horns. Like I said, this horn taught me to play trumpet better on my normal horns. You know, I mean, so it's just a cool it's a cool thing to be interested in, and I think there should be some of that, right? I make all my students play one of the 3 classical concerti. And I sometimes get a lot of flack for this. Like, well, why, you know, you have grad students playing the Haydn. They should be more advanced than that. I'm like, well, first of all, you know, playing easy pieces isn't always easy. And not everybody thinks the same things are easy. But also, if you've never performed the Neruda or the Hummel or the Haydn, which are our 3 big ones, you could add some other things around there. But those are the 3, you know, the way they are. If you've never played one of those pieces, then you're sort of disconnected from the history that is why we are allowed to play solos on trumpet now, right? We just didn't, the Baroque era, we never played the closest we got was Concerto Grosso, and that was like Brandenburg 2, right? Which I apparently have a month to prepare again, so I'm down to the wire on another Brandenburg. But it's not a trumpet solo, it's a Concerto Grosso, right? So there's 4 soloists, and the whole group is almost a soloist. And then after the Haydn is the marker, because the Neruda is, even though it's before, it was written for like basically hand horn. And the reason we stole it is because the same guys played horn and trumpet. It was like high brass players, right? So, or at least a lot of them. And so we borrowed that literature because it was like, oh, I can play it on the keyed trumpet, you know, but we get this instrument that can play chromatically in the normal register, and it changes our lives, right? Now we are a solo voice, a solo instrument. We can do things that the violins and oboes could do. And then that develops the valve, and that develops the cornet. And, you know, and the cornet literature is real violin literature almost, right? They're equal rock stars in that era. So, I mean, without those 3 pieces, that era, I should say, of pieces, you know, we'd still be playing principale parts in orchestra, maybe.
Well, I would be right with you, because those are 3 pieces that I make sure, whether or not my students perform them, they learn them in the undergraduate because of exactly what you're talking about. Well, first of all, I think that helps put them on equal footing with everybody else who's going through their degree, right? I mean,
Right.
there has to be some level of, you know, minimum level of experience with these pieces, but they're also great music. Right?
Yeah.
It's not just learning the Haydn for the sake of learning Haydn or the Hummel or the Neruda. I mean, the second movement of Neruda, I think doesn't get played enough on its own. It's gorgeous. It's like the second movement of the Hummel, right?
Yeah. And the second move of the Haydn, I think, is I think it's the singular most perfect composition that any instrument has. I mean, just from a technical, like when you study in music theory class, it does everything perfectly, and it's beautiful, right? I mean, all three of those pieces have great second movements. You could argue about the quality of one versus another of the whole piece, or the first or second or third movements, right? You can pick a favorite, but you can't say any of them are bad, right? It's just, they're really beautiful. So yeah, I mean, and yeah, if you don't know those pieces, then you're disconnected from that history. And I don't care how well you can play the Honegger Entrada, which is also a great piece. If you don't know that part of your history, then there's just a disconnect. And I know that, 100 years from now, somebody will be like, Haydn who? We don't care. But
okay, we're going to take a left turn, because this is actually getting me into a question I was going to ask you tonight.
Okay, great.
And every time somebody starts teaching college, it's like a new generation of teachers, right?
Uh-huh.
And we bring our own experience as students into that teaching experience. So my question is this: from your studies, and of course yours is even a little more unique because you grew up, I mean, from the beginning in the trumpet culture. So maybe this is not a fair question, but what have you seen in the evolution of trumpet pedagogy that's different from when you studied to where you are? What are the students expecting now? What are they getting now that you think, well,
oh, I see. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm phrasing that correctly, but
no, I think so. In other words, what am I seeing from incoming students?
Yeah.
What their needs are.
What are they expecting? What are they missing? Either this new generation of teachers is deciding to leave. Maybe they're deciding, hey, we're not going to talk about Haydn, Hummel.
Yeah,
right?
This is a really great question, fascinating question. So I'll answer it two ways very quickly. One is, when I first started teaching, I was 23-ish, I think. Yeah.
So what, 2 years ago? I mean, you're still young, right?
I'm not that young. I've got at least an extra decade and then some on that age.
Right.
But yeah, I was fresh out of grad school. In fact, I was trying to do a third year of grad school because I didn't know what I was going to do, and then I got a job, and I was like, never mind, sorry. But I remember this sensation of like, I'm going to really do it right. I've had a lot of good teachers, but not everybody does it the best way. And even my teachers didn't do everything right, but I'm going to really fix it. I'm going to do it. And I think that there's obviously a youthful arrogance to that I think actually is very welcome to. If you're a new teacher, just let that fly for a little while, right? That's a good energy, even if it's misguided. But then you very quickly find out, oh, there's a reason that people do things the way they do them. And it's very humbling to do that for what is now my 14th year, I think, teaching, at a college level, at least. And every year I come up with more stuff that I was like, oh, that's why that guy did that. Even though I didn't maybe like it at the time, and I thought I was going to fix the world, there was maybe a reason. And that's not to be boomer about it or anything. I'm not trying to stay with the old ways, but it's important to discover what they were about on your own, and to also listen very carefully, I think, when people explain it. So that's the pedagogy side. What I'm seeing, you adapt to that, right? And what you adapt to is what the students are bringing in, what they're coming in with, what they're coming in without, like you said. And so what I've noticed, I live in a fairly rural part of eastern North Carolina, and that's where my school is. That's where I live, and it tends to mean that there aren't as many people who can play giant steps when they come to college, or even necessarily all their major scales. And that's just a part. That's a part of the amount of wealth or lack thereof down here in some parts, and just the immense need we have sometimes for band directors. There aren't enough band directors to go around for every county, for every school, every year. So now that's not to say we don't have great programs. I can't even. It would take me the whole time we have here to list all the band directors I know that are doing a great job, that are just within an hour's drive of me, right? But that's just how many people there are and how many schools there are. There are even more than that. So So that there are some basics missing sometimes, but that doesn't mean those people aren't going to be good students. They just need someone to show them what they need to know and how to do it. So I'm very sort of systematic. And so I have a syllabus that your graded material is these things, like we were sort of talking about, like everybody needs to do certain things so that it's, because it's a class, you have to be fair about a class where you get a grade and a degree, right?
Right.
You can't just say, well, for Larry, he's already pretty good, so he needs to play like the Peter Maxwell Davies for his jury. But, Joey over here, he doesn't know all his scales, so he's just going to play just the exposition of the Haydn on B-flat trumpet as written. I mean, that's not, you can't do that. So I have a certain amount of material, but what I'm now doing is every single lesson, you're going to do some sort of scale. I mean, once you know your major and minor scales, there's octatonic, all your pentatonics, all your minor modes. Nobody practices minor modes except for jazz musicians, and they call them other stuff. But like, there's always a scale to learn. So you're always going to do a scale or two that you've prepared. You're always going to transpose. That's also prepared. You're going to sight read, which can't be prepared except that you work on it. And you're going to do, what am I missing? You're going to do some flexibility every week for me, like in your lesson. And then now I've also added excerpts to it because it's really easy to not quite get to excerpts. And then you're like, oh no, you're taking an audition? Well, do you know Petrushka? And when they're like, no, you're like, oh, I'm a terrible teacher. My kids don't even know Petrushka, but you got to show people what they don't know, right? So that's my way of sort of dealing with that. It's like, it takes 20 minutes, but it's the best 20 minutes of your lesson if you're curious. And so then you knock all those things out, and then you can get to the Honegger and Trotta if you want to play that, right? Mm-hmm. Or your lesson material that week that's just some other etudes that maybe are or aren't transferred. And it ends up being like, well, if your lesson material can be one of those things, that's what we need to, that's fine. We can overlap, but we need to be addressing them. So those are a lot of the things. I mean, and if I start right away, I've learned that a freshman coming in, they don't know how hard transposition is. So they just do it. And they're pretty good at it. But if I wait, it's, I've never transposed down a minor third. And it's like, well, do it though. Just
Okay, I want your perspective on this. Sergey, and he said this in many interviews, but people ask him, what etudes do you practice? And his response is, I don't practice etudes. I just play repertoire. And on some level, you're thinking, well, duh. Yeah. Why are we wasting time with Boehm and Brandt and Lancinatti and all that stuff? It's like, why don't we just get to, and I think, okay, for a small percentage of us, that might be okay. But what do you see as the benefit of etudes in, hey, man, I wasn't planning to ask this question. Well, I hope this is not a bad question, but
no, I'm happy to talk about it. I talk about it regularly with my students. Etude, well, first of all, the word etude is French for study, right?
Study, right.
And so we all know this. Well, we don't all know this. That's why I said it. So for any listening people who don't know that, it means study. And I think Sergey has a point there that if this isn't music we're going to perform, and we are going to perform other music that we could be busy learning, there's a very logical argument there, I think, right? I mean, it's very straightforward. But why would we still want to do etudes? Well, because they're usually a little bit easier and a little simpler in terms of, like, if you play well, this is the Boehm book, right? If you play the Boehm concerto, well, Burma, if you're being real, whatever. But if you play the Boehm concerto, that might be way out of your league. I mean, it's a lot of oh no, I don't have any.
I'm thinking the second page, right? Right? The complex figure there.
Even just doing, what does it start on, low A? The passage right before that.
Mm-hmm.
Augmented, right? That might be hard. That maybe you've never played an augmented triad before. I mean, it's like, this is exotic sounding if you've only played band music your whole life. So and then I mean, all these little things. Well, this book has that's a sort of nasty lick, but it's all on the staff.
Yep.
It gives me time to figure out how to do all these trills. I got to figure out how to do a turn. I got to figure out how to do a trill that's terminated upwards to the next note. There's a bunch of stuff in there, plus articulation, sextuplets, all that stuff. So I can work on this. I can't necessarily play. I'm just going to get discouraged if I play the whole thing. And I think that that's true. If you have the Botza book, the Botza book is really great. It's actual, like, almost studies for the pieces he wrote. Some quotes. The first thing is, oh, sorry. What is it? It's in some key. I can't remember the first note. But
right.
It's like straight out of the piece, and then there's some other stuff in there that he never wrote into any pieces, at least for us. But this is the point: is that these are the etudes help you study the types of things you're going to need to know, and they're also different than the literature. They teach you patterns. They teach you techniques. They teach you. That's the thing for sight reading. My dad says that you don't sight read, you sight remember. And the point of that is to say, well, if you've never seen it ever before and you've never played the sound of it before, what's your chance, really? You're going to have to figure it out on the spot. But if you played an etude that had it in there, it's going to go great, because you're going, oh yeah, this. And sometimes it's like, well, you've never played it in F sharp major before, but I've played a lot in F sharp major, and I've played that rhythm, and I've played that kind of architecture of the line. And so I can recognize that this is a major triad that does this thing that I know, in this rhythm that I know, in this key that I know. And so then sometimes you surprise yourself. You go, oh, I didn't know I could do that. But
yeah, so that's something I tell my younger students, oh, I hate sight reading. And I say, okay, look at this. See any notes you've never seen before? Do you see a Q flat, P sharp?
Right.
Oh no, I know all the notes. You see any rhythms you've never seen? And there might be a rhythm they've never seen.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, so you know, and we'll talk about the roadmap, the key, the time, all that. And I said, anything that you've never seen? No. I said, so what's the big deal? Right? You know all this stuff. The only difference is exactly what you're saying is it's in a different configuration than you've seen before.
Right.
Right. So I think sometimes if you try to take that mystery out of it, or the idea that you're playing something you've never seen before in any way, shape, or form, that would be kind of scary.
Oh yeah.
But to me, I also say, you know what, it's like walking into a dark room. You can either walk into a dark room and stumble over everything, or you can turn the lights on and figure out your path.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And I mean, it comes down to whether you can tell what it sounds like and whether you've physically practiced that sound, right?
Yeah.
So it's that recognition too. If you can also, there are a lot of very good sight readers that can read a certain speed and no faster. And that's because they can read note by note really fast.
That's me. I'm trying to hold it in my hand. That's I fall into that category.
Well, and we all do to some degree, because we run out of buffer zone for our brain, and we start just going no. But if you zoom out, I spend a lot of time really far away from music, so I can't really read note by note. Like my eyes can't focus on just this much. I have a whole bunch of weird quirks like this, but like in an orchestra, my music is in the next row in front of me. And there's no chair in that row in front of me, and then I'm in the back row here, and I have to get up and turn the page and then sit back down, because in orchestra music that's fine anyway. Nothing goes by that fast, but everybody makes fun of me for it. But I can see the conductor, I can see I can see the whole phrase I'm about to play, and I don't have to move my horn position because I'm always below the stand or around the stand. I'm never playing right into it, and even if I did, the sound's going to go around it still because I'm like 4 feet away. And so there's a lot of advantages there. But the biggest one is really like when I'm sight reading, you want to lean in. That's what we all do. But I zoom back out and I'm like, I'm going to have to play the shape of this and not try to get too granular, because I'll slow down. And again, then it's about recognizing shapes and just, I assume a sound and I play that sound, and if it's wrong, I pay the price. So I'm not sure it's better, but it's a different sort of approach to it.
So little tongue in cheek, I mean, isn't really one of the best benefits of having your stand where it is in orchestra is that you don't have a violist right in front of you?
Yeah, they'll still put up the shield even in between you and your music. I have a story about that I won't tell, but yeah, they'll in the break they'll put up a shield no matter what. Right. they'll find a way. So,
Yeah,
but yes,
they'll find a way. It's very Jurassic Park, like Viola finds a way.
Viola
right?
finds a way. That's right. That's right.
So, okay, so we've avoided the elephant in the room
Oh,
for what, a 45 minutes. So you've mentioned your dad, and of course, if anybody doesn't know who your dad is, that's probably okay, right? I
yeah.
mean, I like to think that Gabriel DiMartino is his own trumpet player, is his own teacher.
Oh,
But you
yeah.
do come from a rather well-known. I mean, DiMartino. Everybody think, oh, Vinny, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Vinny. Well, he knows a lot of people. He's a very social creature, and he's a very helpful creature too. And so a lot of people have been helped by him. And so of course they think of him. I was actually, this is my sort of dark joke for this podcast. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the name, especially the legend part. And I was like, man, I don't know. I don't think I can go on. I don't have any kind of legend, because legend, I think about like books and stories, legends, legend. And I was like, well, so, okay, what would the legend of Gabriel DiMartino be? And I figured it out. This is it. It's two guys, and one guy goes, hey, I heard Vince had a son. And the other guy goes, yeah, it's Gabriel. There it is. That's the legend. Because there has to be a premise, and then there has to be a payoff. So that's my whole legend. Yep, that's true.
okay. So, I don't know. Have you and I actually discussed this before? When you were, I think, maybe 1 or 2 years old. Do you remember this?
I don't remember it. No, it's too.
Well, okay. I know I brought it up to your dad at one point, but back when he was living in the cabin,
Mm-hmm.
and I was at UK, and he had one of his studio Halloween parties out at
Sure,
the
yeah.
cabin, and I wore a giant teddy bear costume,
Uh-huh.
and you sat in my lap the entire evening.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I
Now
believe it.
I'm actually a little embarrassed saying that out loud right now, but to me it's like, I mean, how hilarious is that? It's just that I knew you before I knew you were going to become, this incredible musician and teacher. But for what, the beautiful thing about that, yes, we're live, but now I'm going to edit that out.
Oh, good. Okay,
No,
yeah.
I'm not. Hey, so Klaus Anselm, one of the people here in the chat,
Uh-huh.
Klaus and I just went through Suzuki trumpet class together.
Oh, so cool. I
And
wanted to ask you so much about that, but you
well,
keep going.
Well, Klaus and I actually, he's also very talented in a number of other ways. And he and I were actually on a Zoom thing yesterday or a day before. And we're talking about HFL, Hear from Legends. But we're also talking, I think I'm going to change the meaning. It used to be higher, faster, louder,
Uh-huh.
right? Then it was Hear from Legends. And sometimes people joke, it's really Hear from Larry, which works.
That's good too. Well,
But
you should
I
like
also
that
think,
I watched that video podcast.
but Hear from Life,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
I think also works. There are a number of things that could work for that. And there's some rather profane things that could pop in there, but we're not going to discuss any of those. But I would like to say give a shout out to Klaus,
Yeah.
and also David Wolf. David is
Yeah, I see.
a
Hi,
friend of
David.
mine and a trumpet player. Both of them are trumpet players. David, I think, came down to UK, whatever Jason put on a couple of years ago. The last time
Uh-huh.
they had it in person.
That's right. Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
So you probably know him at least
Mm-hmm.
from that. So both really good people, and thanks for being here, guys. Um, yeah, seeing your dad. Well, he was my first teacher. For those that don't already know that, I've probably said that in every interview that I've done because I hold him that high regard.
Sure.
Um, but I see the way he interacts at ITGs and other master classes. And I'm thinking, he's not putting on anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's him. That's Vinny. He's legit.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen with you, that's the same thing. You're the real deal, right? And I think that's
I try
something
to.
that is well. I think that's something that is. I think more often than not, trumpet players get such a bad rap. Maybe not anymore, right? We used to be the definition of
Yeah.
egotistical, and
Yeah.
there's still some.
They're still out there, but
But, I think more often than not these days, it's like the way you describe Trent Austin. It's like the way we would describe even Vizzuti, and how much, they're invested in helping people. And it's just, and I see that in you as well. And I think, that's a testament to your dad, and, the atmosphere that you were brought up in. But, so would you talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in, I wouldn't say in the shadow, but did you ever feel like you were in the shadow with anything?
Yeah, well, when we talked before for a different purpose, I believe, we talked about this a little, and that this is my most, when I go do master classes or interviews or anything, the question I get asked most is, was it hard growing up in your dad's shadow, or something along these lines, right?
Right.
And my answer has been the same for almost 2 decades, since I thought of it, really, because it was hard for me to answer. I was like, no, I never really felt like that. I mean, it does, because you see him doing what he's doing, right? And I wasn't doing any of that for most of my life. And now I'm starting to get into things that are kind of that same level, but like he's also still doing. I mean, so there is a shadow that is cast, and that people want to compare you. And so, but the answer I thought of that I have been sticking to, and really sums it up, is that if I played every gig with him for the rest of my life, and like second trumpet to him, or second fiddle, as it were, right? That would be one of the greatest careers in trumpet history still. It would still be amazing every concert, right? Because you get to play with one of the greatest trumpet players in the world. And I talk about the Great American Brass Band Festival, where I played with him and Alan Vizzuti and Doc Severinsen all on stage at the same time. Like, I mean, we must have done 6 or 7 performances in 2 days. And it's like, I was in heaven. That's like the pinnacle achievement for me. Those are the 3 greatest legends for my life, that I looked up to, no matter what age I was. The 3 of them were always there. And so I felt totally like, I was just happy that I could kind of fit in with them. I couldn't really hang with them. I couldn't, I was nervous about the comparison, but I got to be on stage with them, and I didn't totally fold, and that's like, I think I think anybody, who plays trumpet would kill for that opportunity, and I got it. So I don't need to feel like I'm special. That's pretty special, that's pretty, and just playing all the gigs I played with my dad, that's also pretty special. I mean, and a lot of people played with him, but they all felt special when they did it too. And so sure. I think that's fine for me. And I've played lots of things, alone now. I've had a longer career than just the things that we've done together, but that would be fine with me. I would be happy. And that I get to do other things is also great. So
okay. So from a performance aspect, maybe, I don't know when you thought, yes, I want to be a performer. But I'm also curious about when this desire to teach, when you're like, hey, I might really like to do this too. Were those simultaneous, or how did both of those come around?
Well, they're the same. They're the same goal. So, okay, well, it's 100% stolen from my dad in that same genuine way, of that he's very genuine. And, he didn't have a very technical teacher in Sid Meier. Sid Meier was really great teacher, but he taught music, he taught phrasing, he taught all important stuff, but he didn't talk very much about trumpet. And so my dad kind of taught himself trumpet by asking people questions and doing things. And I'll let him tell that story, but he wanted to be a teacher because of that. And also because of some, back then the orchestras were a pretty dark place to be sometimes. And even though everybody wanted to be in one, when you found out what that meant, some people turned the other way. And he was one of them. He said, no, I did enough time and, saw enough people, mad about nothing. So I don't need that. Right. And so he joined. I would argue now that academia is probably worse than orchestras in that same way, but maybe not in the music school. But so he joined, he decided to be a teacher, and a lifelong teacher. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help other people get further. And I get sort of on a soapbox about this, because there's a lot of people out there that will just tell you, you're not going to make it, sorry, you're starting too late. Or they'll bully you into like, well, if you really wanted this, then you wouldn't have come as so unprepared or whatever. And I don't think we live in a world where that works very well anymore. I'm not sure that it ever worked well. I think the generosity that comes from wanting to show somebody what they need to do and help them along. I think that's going to work better. And I hate now, especially when people will say that this guy's not going to make it, or, well, maybe he graduated from such and such, but I haven't heard him play. And it's like, no, maybe he's just not there yet. Give him time, give people, but anyway, so the performance part of it is me being better prepared to teach people to do whatever it is they want to do. And it's very fulfilling. I mean, I love performing. And it's not really even secondary a lot of the time. It almost has to be primary so that you make sure you do enough of the different types of it. But the purpose of it is both in the moment of the performance, and because that informs how you practice, and that informs what you might be able to help somebody learn. And so that's the real story of it.
I appreciate something you said there, and this is going to go back to Suzuki and his belief and my belief too, that of course he was talking about early childhood education, but that every child can.
Yeah.
That's an actual part of Suzuki, and that every child progresses at their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think, okay, that is really how I want to now approach teaching at the college level, because I still think every student that comes in, you can't really call them a child when they're 18, but yes, they're still a child, right?
Depends.
Yeah, it depends. But, okay, so every student can. Unfortunately, we can't, we don't have the opportunity to let them develop at their own pace that it might really take. A 4-year undergrad, you've got to try to fit everything nicely into that. And I think that's unfortunate, because you've had experience with students. If they had had another 2 or 3 years, they would have graduated and been, or longer or shorter, right? But the point is giving people the time they need to really get where they need to be.
And this is going to be controversial to an extreme degree, I think, in some circles. But I think that's because we don't do it right. I think we have these strictures on us to, got to get them out in 4 years. Well, why is that? Well, it's because the parents don't want to pay for 5 or 6 years. They want to guarantee that they're going to have a fixed cost in this many years. We also up the tuition for a lot of places after that 4th year. If you don't do it in 4, then the price goes way up per credit or whatever. And we punish people for trying to take their time. And that's the opposite of what we should be doing. In fact, the other part is graduation rates. We boast at every university, I'm not saying this about mine specifically because they're all the same now, that we have a 90-something% graduation rate in 4 years. And that, again, for the same reason. Okay, well, that's great, but is that really something to be proud of? I mean, that's just saying it's very easy to graduate from here. Most people do.
Oh, if you phrase it like that, man, you're going to make a lot of people mad.
That's right. And I would say it would be, I didn't want to, the school that I went to was in Chicago, and I grew up in the country in Kentucky. I hated the city. I didn't want to go there, but I chose the teacher that was going to help me the most for that time. And I didn't care about the rest. I wanted the education. So if that was really true about our educational institutions, then they would boast more like a 60% graduation in 4 years rate. And they would absolutely shout it to the hilltops, right? They'd say it's extremely hard to get out of here in 4 years, but most people then do it in 5 or 6. And so here are our graduation rates for people in this category, So here's your chances of graduating successfully over time. And here's how hard it is to do in 4 years. The students will absolutely rise to that challenge. They'll absolutely just gnashing and biting their way to get to that 4-year degree. They'll try harder and they'll put that on their resume. And then when you're looking at it for grad school or for your job application or whatever, you'll go, you graduated at B-flat university in 4 years. I've only met 2 people who've ever done that, and that would be impressive. And there's that much to learn at least. I mean, I always feel like I need 2, 3, 4 more years with each student to actually teach them all the stuff that I would like for them to know.
But, wouldn't it be better, though, if if they didn't have to wait until their freshman year of college to really start this kind of education? Don't you think it would be better if there, and I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me saying this, if there were real music education happening instead of teaching marching band? And, and look, I was in drum corps, and I like marching band, but, I mean, where's the real music education happening? Where's that individual attention and nurturing and development that's going to really take somebody deeper into music and to love, learning to really become proficient on their instrument and love the repertoire and love the process.
Well, and you see it in the best schools, right? The best schools have all of that and a marching band and whatever, right? Whatever the kids sort of clamor for, but they start from there, what you just described. And those are the best programs, and those students are really prepared for college. And I've had some of them over the years. And it's nobody, at least I don't think either of us are blaming the band directors, because a lot of times it's underfunded programs, and it's what's always been done, and you can't do differently because the district won't let you. And that's where the competition, I mean, there's so much, it's this in this, Ramjack Corporation kind of industrial complex that it's just what we're used to, and it's all the little things. And this is true of academia. This is true of public school systems. But yeah, you're right. It would be really great if someone were helping people learn these important things earlier, because it's not going to force the other things that they do out of the picture, right? If you want to have a marching band or a polka band or a jazz band, it doesn't matter. But if you want to have those things, they're only going to be better for having this as a core. So, and then this is, I mean, not to, toot my own horn or whatever, but this is a big part of what I've been trying to do online in the last basically year, of just like putting trumpet education stuff out there. Like we talked about, like that Trent has been doing for years now. I mean, it's like, well, look, this is how I do lip slurs. Here's a 1-minute video on TikTok that shows you how to do a lip slur, right? Here's me talking about, I mean, I live stream every Friday at 3 Eastern time, and it's usually just me practicing. And one week I got like 20 minutes. I just go until I stop, and it's usually a couple hours. And I did 20 minutes on trying to work out the like pitch class system in whatever contemporary piece I was playing. And I just got into it. I didn't think about, I was on stream and I shouldn't. And I kept like kind of thinking, every once in a while, a little light would turn on the back of my head, like, nobody wants to hear this, Gabriel. This isn't interesting to anybody but you. But I was like, no, this is real. And, to one kid out there, maybe someday, who sees that Twitch stream, 5 years from now or whatever it is, they might be like, did he say vector analysis? I'm going to look that up on Google. Hold on. Let me see about vector analysis. Oh, this is really fascinating. Well, I like math and I like music. Now I've found a merger. I would love for that to happen. And I don't know if it ever will, but I know that it can't if nobody is excited about anything and putting it out there, So that's part of the, and I don't always do the best job at it on my streams or on my TikTok videos or on my warm-ups on YouTube or whatever. I do the best I can, and I try to make it accessible. And my goal is to help those students that haven't come to college yet. Because once they're in college, I know hundreds and hundreds of great trumpet teachers at the college level. And I know dozens and dozens, and I know there are even more, but I know dozens of high school trumpet teachers that are usually in more affluent areas. But there's nobody in, I don't want to name a place, but there's, except for Vince DiMartino, there's nobody else teaching trumpet in Boyle County, Kentucky, who you'd really definitely want to study with, right?
Right.
My knowledge, I mean, maybe there is now, I don't know, but and that's most places. It's the norm. It's not the exception. Right. And so to have something that's, and I know that internet access is also a commodity we take for granted. And I mean, there's other things that are, but more people have internet than have access to good trumpet teachers. And those trumpet teachers are still going to want some money because that's how they make their living. So this is a free resource that you can get if you have the internet at some point during the day. You can, download things and whatever. So my dad is calling me right now, which
Yeah,
means he should be watching the stream.
that's
But
right. Or maybe he's calling to tell you should talk about something
else, right?
Right.
But so that's the thing, is that you're right. These people, need to start earlier if they're going to finish in 4 or 5 years.
But see, this is where I see the real value, where I feel like now I can make a difference, right, with Suzuki trumpet and being able to start these kids, because I see the advantage with string players starting that young, and it's like, oh my gosh, can you imagine? And let's see, would be 12 or so years, getting some Suzuki students apply to your school, who you're like, they're playing at master's level, and they're applying for undergrad, and I think though that is great in itself, but also just that they've been exposed to more. They're more mature in so many ways. So I'm excited about the opportunity to do that. Whether I'm going to be effective in that is yet to be seen, but that's my hope.
Well, and very much up to you, right? That armed with new tools that really, honestly, I mean, how long ago is it that the first person got certified Suzuki trumpet? It was a year or less, right?
No, 2016 is when the first. Yeah,
that feels like a year ago. But
close.
I mean, it's just not that. So armed with new tools, nobody knows how to perfectly wield them effectively, but it's down to us to figure that out, and then whatever those tools may be, and even some limited success at first turns into this, it just blossoms out. It's so amazing. And I mean, you're right. Like, I would love to have a brass player. It doesn't even need to be trumpet. I would love to have a brass player who stood a chance in a concerto competition anywhere. And I mean, of course, sometimes they do, but they're diamonds in the rough. I mean, they're just impossible to find, because the pianist isn't going to miss a note, and the violinist, if they miss a note, it went by so fast because they played 85,000 notes in their concerto. Right. And then somebody comes in and plays a really, really good Bain concerto, but they missed one high A, and that didn't sound very good for a second, and they can't win. I mean, it's just not a fair, it's not a fair shake. But maybe they could if they were playing. I mean, I'm making some assumptions about Suzuki, but if they're really playing from the same place of like the sound that they want to hear, and the architecture of the line is something that is inherent in the way that they play, instead of just kind of piece by piece, note by note, and it's something that I've struggled with to teach my whole life. And that that's why I said I have 1,000 questions about it, because I'm like, well, it feels like the missing link to me, right? Like, it feels like I'm begging people to play by ear more, but they're reading note by note more. And like, from what I understand of the Suzuki method, that's built out of the process, and then you come back in from a totally different angle, and still with everything that you had before, and then more. So
well, there is a lot of rote teaching at the beginning, but of course, the assumption is, the stereotype had been that they don't learn to read. That's not necessarily the case. That might be the case with some studios, but really, the Suzuki method incorporates very early on note reading. Mm-hmm. It's just you are really taught to use your ears from the very beginning. Right. Modeling is the key.
Yeah. Well, and then it's sound reading, right? Because then you're not reading a note that you say that's a G flat, and G flat is second valve. There might be, like you said, some rote, but it's like, here's what you're trying to sound like, and here's how you get it. It's a complete reversal of the mental process of like, and I mean, I could make a whole argument about how culturally this is something that we deal with a lot in the United States, where like, I did this and I did this and I expect this, but it didn't happen. So where is it? And it's like, well, you can't just put down second valve and get G flat to come out. You have to play the right note. But I did. I put the valve. It's like, no, wait. There's more to it. There's something else going on here. So,
do you remember Sorry,
Yeah.
was it David Baldwin? I think was one
Uh-huh.
of the first to record like all the
All the
characteristic studies,
Charliers. Yeah, he did all the
right?
Charliers and he did all the Biche etudes. I think those were his first two projects. I don't know if he did
Okay.
the
Well,
characteristics, but yeah.
Somebody did. Where I know Paul Mays has recorded. There's a
Uh-huh.
great recording of him doing characteristic Arbor number
Yeah.
one. But when those things came out, right, all of a sudden, I knew how to play Charlier
Yeah.
because I wasn't having to figure it out, like reading hieroglyphics. It's like, oh, that's what that's supposed to sound like. And then how, exponentially learning that piece of music was, well, it went up exponentially to be
Yeah.
redundant. It was like, well, once I heard it, yeah, okay, I can copy that. Well, not right away, but
No,
I
but
can get
you
a lot
can,
closer.
yeah, and you can work towards something then because it's not just, I mean, if you're doing a recital, there's some people just they'll play their piece down and they'll go, I missed a note here, missed a note here. They'll play their piece down again. Well, now I missed this note and this note over here, but I got the two that I missed before. And they'll play it again. And they've missed three notes, but they're in three different places than the other four. And that's very frustrating when you're trying to do a recital or just a performance of any kind. You're like, I've played everything perfectly. Why can't I do it all at once? And well, yeah, it's really hard, but there's no goal there. Then it's just, can I get through it again? There's not. It's not. It's one of those things in productivity books and things. They call it a project. You can't do a project. You can do a task. And so this is like, I want to make this piece. I want to play this whole piece better. You can't do that. But you can work on a little section and get it better in your ear and more on autopilot, so you don't have to think about it so hard when you get there. But that generally is not the case with a lot of, at least younger students especially. They're constantly running the meter for their mental stamina, and they're calculating every single little thing, every line, every note, every rhythm, and they're reading it like it's the first time, instead of my students hate this, I think, but I'm like, well, just sing it. We all preach singing now. That's pretty big in the pedagogy world, right? But I'm like, sing it, but like joyfully, right? Like it's fun to sing,
Right.
right? Like it's not like it's not like da, 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 da. You don't sing like that when you're singing along with the radio. So can you play trumpet like you sing with the radio? Can we do that? Can we make that leap? And for that 5 minutes, yeah, sure. But somehow that's really a hard nugget to hold on to, because we go right back into the weeds, right? And I do. I mean, I absolutely do. I like I said, I was practicing Brandenburg this last 4 days on stream, and I had to admit to whoever was watching, I was like, I know how this goes. I've definitely heard it a billion times. I've played it. I've practiced it. But I have to admit that right now I'm still reading the notes a little bit.
Mm.
I'm not playing it totally by ear. I'm looking at it and I know the lines, but I'm assuming a little too much, and then I realize I've made a mistake because this happens over here, but with a different this, and because they're just scales. I mean, but and I had to. I was like, I'm embarrassed to admit that I guess I don't really know how Brandenburg goes. And so then what did I do? I went and listened to one of the nice Baroque orchestra recordings, like 5 times in a row, and then I sang it for like another 20 minutes, just like doing my laundry. And then I came back down and I played it, and it was the easiest thing I've ever played. I was like, I couldn't have written a better ironic script of like, would you teach all these things, Gabriel? Did you decide that you didn't need to do them, or what were you thinking exactly?
Yeah. Well, we're human, right? I mean, yes, we have
Sure.
to practice what we preach, but sometimes we have to be reminded what it is we need to preach.
Yeah.
Tina Helseth is one of my favorite musicians,
Yeah.
and I only recently discovered that she also sings.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear her sing, my first reaction was, well, of course, that's why she plays the trumpet the way she does.
Uh-huh.
Now it's a very smoky, sultry kind of vocal
Mm-hmm.
tone, but the musicianship in it is like, oh, well, that's again why she plays the way she does. And I think what a great example of you should be able to sing it. If you want to play the trumpet lyrically, like we're always told, sing through your trumpet, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, don't go da 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 da, because that's how it's going to come out on the trumpet, right?
Yeah, or at least some closer to that than what you
Yeah, but
want.
you don't have to go da da da. It would be great if you did,
Yeah.
but but if you can show that you have an understanding of what that real tone production, real tone quality is supposed to be like, then you have a much better chance making it
Yeah.
happen on the trumpet.
Yeah. I mean, Hunter Eberly changed my life one summer. He's the Detroit Symphony
Mm-hmm.
principal. And he came to Interlochen one summer and gave a couple master classes, but he made everybody sing. And he said, no, you got to really sing, And so he would sing and he'd go, oh, oh, I mean, this really beautiful operatic voice. And he goes, I'm sorry, my voice is so bad. I broke my vocal cords one year singing too hard. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, well, what I realized is that the better you sing, the better your tone production is. Like literally one for one. And you can actually sing with the exact proper, vocal folds and tongue position and all that stuff that will get
Yes.
you the actual tone. So you don't even have to make an adjustment. You just literally, instead of making your vocal cords vibrate, you make your lips vibrate and everything else is the same. So he was doing this with students and I was going, oh, wait a minute. Is that really true? Can that be right? I never thought about this before. And I mean, I have like 10 pages of notes from like an hour-long masterclass. But and then I went and talked to him about it. And he was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I really did I had to go get him fixed and he's like, I'm not really allowed to sing as much as I used to because they'll break again. I don't know if he cares about me airing that dirty laundry or whatever. But I mean, he said in a masterclass as like sort of, you should be singing so much that you're in danger of, like that's how important it is. And I never thought about the quality of the voice before. And it changed my life. Like I said, I mean, and you're right. It does, Chet Baker is one of my favorite trumpet players of all time too. And his soloing is so lyrical and so meaningful. The lines are not just sort of technical prowess, even though he has that sometimes, but it's not pyrotechnics. It's a song, and he's writing you a new melody that's at least as good as the original that he probably just sang. And Chet Baker Sings is the only album I can never get enough of, I think, because you hear it in the quality of his voice and the quality of his sound, and these are the same sound in his head,
Well, but you talk about transferring things from vocal to trumpet. I also think that the way we teach articulation, right? If I can go dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da, that's exactly the articulation I should use, right? But then the students they'll sing it da da dee da 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 dee da, and then put it on the trumpet. They go ta 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 ta. No,
yeah.
no. No, I mean it is literally the same. Only don't engage your vocal cords, right? Do you agree with that?
I do. Well, I mean, I heard John Hagstrom do this at a Rich Stozel masterclass before when he was still at Grand Valley, and it was the best thing. I can't remember who asked the question, but he sang something. Just didn't mention it. Just said, singing is important. Demonstrating, working with a student, and he sang, da, 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 dun, 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 dun. And he had this very weird, like da, 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 a little bit brushy D kind of tonguing. Da, 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 da. And oh man, I wish I could remember who it was. But anyway, somebody in the audience, another professional trumpet player, raised his hand and goes, "You sang this articulation. That's how you play it, isn't it?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, thanks. Oh yeah, I was Steve Burns," because he has ears for that. He's like, something special is happening here. He has like a spidey sense for that. So he goes, that's the articulation used on the trumpet? And he goes, "Oh yeah, if your air is really good, you don't need to bang out the articulation. A kind of a D or a brushy kind of da tongue is plenty to make a really crisp and clean attack. And anything more than that is going to cause turbulence that you don't really need or want. It'll disturb your airflow instead of let it out." And I'm like, I was in like the front row, just again, notes. And I mean, it's those moments where like I didn't connect. That was 5 years before, at least the Hunter Eberle masterclass, but
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I'm talking about with, some of the stuff that I've learned in the last 10 years of practicing is stuff that I absolutely 100% would have laughed at you if you told me I was going to be doing that. But it has a value that is real to me now. Like before we got on here, I didn't know if I was going to be playing or anything. So I warmed up a little bit and I got out my tuba mouthpiece and I played some poo attacks on it. And I got out my trombone mouthpiece and I went from tuba to trombone to bass trumpet to other bass trumpet to what I call 0.5 C to cutout, and then to finally like a up sound with the extra heavy filter on my normal mouthpiece. And I can do the same pitch on all of these and I can do it real fast. Mm-hmm. And like, that's a crazy thing that I do that nobody, I don't know. I would, like I said, I would have laughed at me if I told myself that 10 years ago, but it's like one of the most critical aspects of my playing now. So I think these things that are, these moments where something special is happening, sometimes they don't click for every student in the room. And even if the only student in the room, right? But it's important to keep that kind of nugget in the back of your mind or in your notebook. I keep a very good trumpet journal still to this day. And I look at it, I look back at it. I don't just look at like what I'm writing now. I look at yesterday and the day before and the month before and the week before. And I look at stuff and I go, that worked a week ago. How come I'm not doing that anymore? The same thing is like my practice session where I'm like, oh, did you think you could get away with not knowing, like not being able to sing it or whatever? Yeah, it's because we're human, right? And it's okay to make mistakes. It's very frustrating to repeat them over and over again for years and years and maybe decades. And I've definitely done that. So I try to prevent that if I can. And I try to listen more than I used to things that I don't think will work or that I don't understand. I write them down, I ask questions. And it's not like I could throw in a line of like, well, we're all lifelong learners, right? I mean, yes, of course we are, but it's not because we're not authorities on what we do, right? We know a lot of stuff, and you teach a lot of years, you learn a lot of stuff, you help a lot of people learn that stuff. It's because I don't know. I mean, at least for me, I'm just still so bad at the trumpet, Like there's just still so much stuff that I really just can't do the way I want to do.
Yeah, but you know what? That's going to be the way you're going to say the same thing the day before you die.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Now,
exactly
right?
That. Yeah, I know that I've got a lot going for me, but I'm still so frustrated that of course I need to learn more stuff. I need to learn the secret to tongue position, while Hagstrom can rotary breathe and double tongue at the same time while playing up and down a scale. That's not a thing that's possible for me. So there's something I'm missing if I want that. Now, not everybody has to want that one, but there's a whole bunch just getting like, basic stuff. Like, can I get this note to speak for me right now and stay in tune? That's like simple, but it doesn't happen for me every day. So that's what I mean.
Okay, so here's a little of an aside. How many more people can circular breathe now than could have before? Well, Rafael Mendez used to be the only one that I knew that could do it, right? And now it's not a parlor trick anymore.
Yeah, I think Winton, the Winton recording of Flight of the Bumblebee, was it? Yeah,
and perpetual motion.
And perpetual motion, sure. I think that perpetual motion especially changed everybody's life, right?
Yeah, but he slurred it. Mendez tongued it.
Well, and so did Sergei Nakarikov, right? He does it on. I think I wish he was here to ask. I think he does it as written on E flat trumpet, double or multiple tongue or whatever tongued, but tongued and never stops the whole time. Mm-hmm. But like this is one of those things people always ask about trumpet history. Are we better now than we used to be, or were we better back then as a community, right? Because we used to have the Bernie Edelsteins and the Armando Gatalas, right? Do we have those anymore? I mean, and as students, are we better or worse? And you can make an argument for one way or another, but the arguments for the past hardly stand on any legs after you get into any kind of real technique. Because yes, you can point to Rafael Mendez and say, or Herbert L. Clark, and say, this guy could do it. Okay, yeah, but him and like Jules Levy and Llewellyn, I mean, these are all obscure cornet soloists of the late 1800s. But okay, yeah, like I can count them on one hand, the guys who could do the stuff that they do. And maybe a lot of people were practicing cornet, it was more popular music back then or whatever, but we can do stuff now that you just couldn't even. I mean, how many Brandenburg concerto performances are there going to be this year in the United States? Because I bet it's more than one. And I bet the one is not just the one that's in Greenville, North Carolina. Like there's going to be 10 or 100.
Yeah, and I think honestly the key to that is because we can share so much more quickly now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you used to have to book, a lesson with a teacher and make your way to them, and you would get Xeroxed or mimeographed copies of
Right.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
It smelled great. That blue ink, purple ink smelled great, but you didn't have YouTube. You might have to wait however long to get the album you had to order. So we have the ability to do so much more quickly now. Not everybody takes advantage of it, though, right?
Right.
I mean,
well,
even ourselves. But I think that's why I would argue that we're better off. We're so much better off, and not better off, but so much better in terms of quality.
Yeah, I think we have more opportunity. I think that the argument for the old days being the best stems from how much people cared about what they were doing, like practicing trumpet at school, or I mean, there were definitely, it was more popular to do, right? But you're right, the resources. I mean, my dad's origin story, if we're talking legends, right? He loved playing the trumpet in school, like that part's still going on, right? People still love trumpet. People still play in school. And his teacher, Mr. DiUlio, at West Babylon High School in Long Island, would just use the Arbenz book and turn pages and say, play this one. And he couldn't. So he'd say, well, it doesn't sound good. See you later. And, my dad was motivated, so he wanted to practice. But the way that he really got inspired, he had like 3 albums or something, and he talks about, again, he knows I always get it mixed up with other stories he's told and things that I remember, but he had a Rafael Mendez recording, and so he would just try to mimic it, right? And then he had a Maynard Ferguson recording, and so he just try to mimic it, and not knowing the limitations. Again, this is probably something that comes up in Suzuki as well, but not knowing the limitations, like what's hard, right? You just try to do it, and then of course you fail because you don't know what you're doing, but that's part of the expectation that you have for your process. And so the reason he tells the story about the 3 records he has, or 5 or whatever it was, is actually to tell the story about how he learned that music was written down, because he didn't know that you could buy Hey Jerkati, which is the Rafael Mendez solo that he had. He didn't know you could buy that. So he went in the music store and he was like, what? You could just buy the music to this? I've been transcribing this for months. It's like mad about it, And then but that's the thing, is that his story is exceptional because he was successful. And he was successful because he's tenacious in that way, right? He didn't want to fail, and he loved what he was doing. I would say that everybody has that opportunity to be tenacious and love what you're doing, and to keep doing it. And I think, there was a different era, and maybe we like to be told what to do more than figure it out nowadays, a little more as a culture. But I still think that there's joy in figuring it out, and that when people key into that, then they have that same chance of really being just as successful. And but they have to have those resources. They have to have something that inspires them, that they can try to do, that's maybe just always out of reach, and then to grow those resources. And I say that only because I know that that's not the reality for everybody. But like you said, also, if I'm being careful about being ableist about making sure that I don't say that everyone has these resources, right? then if you do have these resources and you're sitting there listening to this podcast, which I guess you'd have to then, if you were hearing this, then you should do something with those, right? You do have sort of an obligation to take the maximum advantage of your resources and to be one of those inspired people. Because guess what? The guy that sits next to you in your band program right now in, Pumpkinville Middle School doesn't have those resources, and you're his inspiration. And he's just going to want to keep up with you, and he's going to ask you questions. And then guess what? You can give him your best Maynard Ferguson recording. This is what I'm saying, is that like the way around the problems that we have where, maybe this person can't have what this person does have, or, the different economic classes and racism and all kinds of ableism and just disparity in the world, is to get excited about the things that we can and share them with other people as many people as possible. And I mean, I'm not, it's not going to change the world, solve all of our problems overnight. But if somebody who has then shares with somebody who doesn't, and then they both can succeed now, that's a solution to, in other words, understanding your privilege and using your platform to empower somebody who doesn't have that. That's important. And we talk about it now a little bit with racism and classism and sexism and, all kinds of different rights movements. We don't talk about it with music. And I'm not here to try to make that equal. I'm here to say well, we already know how to do that, though. We do share music already. We don't do it enough. But this is an important thing that we can all get really excited about and really into. And, and that's one of the reasons that for me, I don't want to put any more barriers, right? All the projects I have online are free because it's already hard enough for some people to get online. And, I don't charge for lessons outside the school, because the school pays me already. So I don't need your $30 or whatever.
Just good. I'm going to book a lesson. I'm coming your way.
Well, the thing is, use it for gas money to get to where somebody, and I can't teach that person every week, right? I don't have the time. So it's not, but let's set them up with somebody who can. I mean, this is what I'm saying. The resources are there, but they're not available to everybody. So let's work on that. Let's work on making them really democratic, really almost socialist. These are naughty words nowadays, but that everybody has equal access to the ability to work hard to get good at what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Everything else you can argue with somebody else about. I'm not a politician, but that's something that I care really deeply about. And that I did also learn from my dad. I don't think I ever saw my dad take a $1 for a lesson outside of school where they pay him to teach the lessons, right? So,
well, I can attest to that because I came to him as a junior in high school, and at the end of the lesson, I had money with me. My dad gave me money, and I said, Mr. DiMartino, how much do I owe you? He goes, as long as you practice, you don't owe me anything.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? I practiced.
That's right. Well, and if if you stop practicing, he's going to come for that money now.
Yeah, right. Of course.
If it was $5, he's going to come find you, Larry.
Yeah.
But that's yeah.
Hey, Gabriel, I can't believe we've gone this long.
I know. Yeah, we've been just talking. I'm sorry.
I really wished I had pushed record a long time ago, but no, this has been great. I tell you what, all of this has been terrific. But the last 5 or so minutes, to me, has been like pure gold.
Oh.
I mean, just the way you're talking about, and I'm thinking this is definitely going to be excerpted. Going to be the promo for this, but.
I hope I said it the right way.
Well, you did. Know. You did. And I feel like we could go forever, and we probably could. But I do want to respect your time. But man, we need to do this again further down the line. And
well, see, I had to talk longer because I had to try to make up the difference between me and the rest of the guys this month. So I had to I can't do quality, but I can do quantity.
Yeah.
So that's what. But no, I mean, I would be happy to do this anytime. Not so much because I have a lot to say, but because it's really easy to, you bring up all the right kinds of things where it's really, you have to think of a second about what you really think about that. You know, it's not to say it's a hard interview. It's hard to be a good interviewer, and you do a really good job, because I have to tell you, I've done a couple of interviews where I just thought, wow, did I really say all that stuff that I don't really want that to go out in the world. And
Right.
and then, but I mean, it's just easy. This is an easy environment to just chat about
Well,
all this
thank you.
stuff. So
I appreciate that very much. And your dad has said the same thing. So I don't know if he paid you to say that here, but
no, well,
so, but
that's what his call was about, actually. It was,
right, right. Um, you know, I always enjoy talking to him. Of course, well, I think I've told enough people now. You know, I'm writing about him.
right.
But I don't know how many. We're in the teens. The number of hours we've spent together in interview.
Oh, I'm sure.
And now it's been a quite a few weeks, but we're going to pick it back up because he still has an awful lot more to share. Kind of like you still have an awful lot more to share, you know. So, well, look, not only am I grateful that you gave me the time to be here tonight, but I'm also grateful that you're doing what you're doing. You know, you're out performing and teaching and staying curious and hungry and all that stuff. I mean, I think to be a colleague or a student of yours would be a pretty cool thing. So I appreciate what you're doing for the trumpet world in that way.
That's very nice of you to say. I do. I try to do that, and I also try to understand that I'm probably not going to do it enough. Nor could any of us, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
that's it's very nice of you to mention that, and just to say it is very kind.
Well, you're welcome. Okay, so let me do. I hate to wrap up like this, but but let me do real quick. Of course, we did a great service to Trent and Austin Custom Brass at the top.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
I'm supposed to play giant steps according to Klaus over here, right?
Yeah.
Because I made Trent do it.
Linda Moore, thank you. David Wolf says this has been fantastic. Yes, thank you guys for chiming in and saying something for that. I appreciate those people that are here. And you know, the cool thing is to see after the fact. Once I upload this to YouTube, right, is like the number of views goes up exponentially. So even though it might not seem like there's a whole lot here, a lot of people are going to see this, which I'm really grateful.
Grateful
for. Okay, so giant steps.
Oh, I guess okay. I don't have to play the head right. I just can play. I'll play the exercise I always play just to make sure I can still do it.
All right.
There you go. This is giant steps, kind of. When it's the right changes, I just played, you know.
That was great. It was great, and now it's here for all of posterity, right? It's recorded. It's there.
Well, I'll tell. This will be my pedagogical moment I didn't teach anybody anything until now. But if you want to make sure that you can still do giant steps, then you can just play that, which is basically just 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5. it's I call it Coltrane and out, because he does that when he gets in trouble.
Oh, funny.
So you just except he does it really artfully, and I just do it as an exercise. But then you can at least hear the changes, and you can get your fingers around it, and then you can play
start somewhere, right? I mean, it might start as an exercise, but how long before that becomes natural, right? And then it becomes part of your voice.
Well, and then you get tired of playing the same old dumb pattern, and so you start to hear in the pattern, and you play. And again, we're back to hearing something and then playing it, right? And this is very Coltrane, because he would say something along the lines of like, well, it takes 3 or 4 courses to get the practice out of my fingers before I play anything really new. I think he also said something about like, if you play more than 4 courses, then you're to get off the stage, you know. So there's like a special like 4 to 5 courses window or something, but that could be those quotes might be anybody, you know, we attributed. But anyway, yeah. So that's that. Now I've done it because I made Trent Austin do it. Sorry. But he actually played a real solo for like 3 choruses, and I just did an exercise. So when I'm ready, I'll do the whole thing. But give me another.
Cool.
That's been 12 years that I've been working on that. So another 12 or 24.
Be careful that you don't slip into that in the middle of Brandenburg, right?
Oh,
Don't throw in a giant steps cadenza.
you know what? That also that in posterity, that was the B flat slide, but without the bit in it. So it's probably a quarter tone sharp.
Oh.
So yeah, so take that, Trent. Try to play it up a quarter tone. Now that's like hyper giant step. That's hyper steps.
Right.
Jeez. That's
Size
because I don't
13. It's a size 13 wide.
Yeah,
right?
see, I don't have perfect pitch, so everything's all, just it's all jelly to me. I don't know. Anyway, so
all right. Hey, okay. So Austin Custom Brass, again, generous sponsor for April's interviews. Trent, thank you. And of course, anybody out there that wants to find out more about Trent and his business, austincustombrass.biz. Check it out. Trent and his shop will take great care of you. Will answer all kinds of questions and set you up with terrific answers and equipment and such. So again, thanks. Gabriel, thanks to you for being here again tonight. Thanks
welcome.
to viewers for being out there. I appreciate your continued support of this program. I will let you know that May is a good lineup too. Vizzuti, Mary Bowden, Wayne Bergeron,
jeez,
Bijan Watson.
Oh man. Okay. So yeah. So don't miss May. I mean, geez,
don't miss May. So okay, you want to go into June? June is I always forget. Raquel Samoya. James Morrison.
Sure.
Jen Murata.
Yeah, she's recording. She's recording all the characteristic studies right now.
Art of phrasing, and they sound great. Chris Coletti and Sarah Stoneback. So I've got the next nine interviews are, to me, well, this is all high powered stuff. I'm really looking forward to all that. So
yeah,
but there'll be a lot of information coming out about those, of course, on social media. Gabriel, hang on just a second. I'm going to sign off here.
Sure.
So again, studioHFL.com if you want to sign up for the newsletter. And there's also some cool merchandise. And I got to throw this in here real quick for the merchandise. And you're going to tell me, Gabriel, if you like, I'm going to get a better picture of this. Hang on. I gotta get this. Where is it? Oh, where is it? There we go. The World Trumpet Force. Right? The WTF.
I get it.
Okay, so you see the Latin at the bottom. Vente labis magis. Blow harder.
Oh, okay. All right. See, right? I grew up too late. We weren't allowed to take Latin in school. I mean, it wasn't an option. But my dad got it though. He can do Latin.
So, anyways, that's an example of one of the shirts available on the website. Hey, Morris Northcutt just chimed in. Morris is a beast of a player, and what a nice guy. Morris, thanks for the comment and for viewing. Morris posts stuff. He's like, here's a little practice on this, that, or the other, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a sound, right?
Oh yeah, well,
yeah,
I hate it.
Sounds great.
That's one of the best and worst things about the internet. I hate it when I get on Facebook and I go, oh look, let's see what this guy's playing. And he goes, well, I haven't warmed up today. I just am gonna play. I'm just gonna play this characteristic study, and it's like, and I'm like, well,
right.
I mean, and then I go,
you're only using one lip, right?
Yeah. Then I go practice, but I don't like it. I'm just telling all you guys out there. I'm so happy for you, but it bums me out for like an hour. And then I practice really hard. I'm still not anywhere close, but then I feel a little better. Yeah. But no, it's great. I mean, it's like I said, it's the greatest and worst because you feel bad, but you're like, wow, that guy can really, I mean, I can't believe that exists, so.
Right. So, all right. Hey, one final sign off. Morris. Yeah, man. Yeah. And Morris, you and I are going to have to chat soon too. So everybody else, thank you again. Gabriel, hang on. I'm going to do a quick sign off here. All right, everybody.